In this lesson, we are going to review cancer in eukaryotic cells. We're going to talk about what cancer is and what can happen as the cell continues to grow. In our bodies, sometimes we have cells that don't respond to external and internal signals to continue or stop parts of the cell cycle. When this happens, our body has internal mechanisms that work to destroy abnormal cells, but sometimes those cells are just too powerful or they can avoid whatever destruction techniques that our body can use. So a cell that keeps dividing and doesn't stop even when there's not any room for any more cells, you have what's called a cancerous cell. And cancer begins with this single cell. As soon as a cancerous cell is formed in a eukaryotic organism, that cell will continue to go through the cell cycle through all of the stages, including G1, S, G2, and then the mitotic stage. Now, even though these cells behave like normal cells, except for the fact that they don't stop dividing, they are not creating more normal cells in the organism's body. They are creating more cancerous cells. So eventually you get a buildup of these cells because they won't stop dividing and they continue making more cancerous cells that will still not stop dividing. So you get a buildup. And when you have a buildup of these cancerous cells, you have what is called a tumor. This picture shows a representation of a tumor forming amongst normal cells. On the left and right sides of this picture, you see some cells with purple nuclei. These are normal cells. Their cell cycle is regulated by all of the external and internal signals we talked about. They make cells for growth and repair when they notice that, this organism is in need. But then these cells in the middle, these cells with the blue nuclei, those are cancerous cells. And this tumor is forming and shoving these normal cells away because there's no room for any more cells, even though these keep dividing. So if this picture went on and cell division kept happening, you would eventually get cells that would be piling up even more as the cancerous cells continue to divide. There's a couple of different types of tumors that we talked about when we were discussing the cancer. Now, a benign tumor, yes, it is a mass or a buildup of cells, but it only occurs in one location. It doesn't invade any organs. It's just a whole bunch of cells piled up in one little area, and there's no spreading that happens. Now, a malignant tumor is worse than that in the sense that it's the mass of cancerous cells that not only continues to divide, but affects because it invades whatever organ it is attached to. So if you have a buildup of cancerous cells on your skin, for example, your skin can be invaded by the cancer. When that happens, the function of whatever organs those cancerous cells affect can be greatly, drastically affected. This image helps depict the differences between a benign tumor and a malignant tumor. Now, a benign tumor, not technically cancerous because it does not spread, it just grows right where it was at and can't spread even through metastasis. Now, a malignant tumor then is when the cells actually invade the neighboring tissues and organs and then can spread throughout the rest of the body. And we call the spreading of cancer metastasis when the cancer not only stays in whatever organ it was originally involved with, but then can spread to neighboring organs and throughout other parts of your body or the organism's body. The last thing I'd like to talk about today is something called a carcinogen. Now, a carcinogen is any substance that can cause cancer in an organism. Some familiar examples for you might be tobacco smoke. It has been widely known that cancer is caused by smoking tobacco. Another carcinogen that you might be familiar with would be ultraviolet rays from the sun. So you know that when you go out in the sun for prolonged periods of time, it is suggested that you are to wear sunscreen to help protect your skin. And lastly, another example that you might have heard of is something called asbestos, which is just a material that used to be used in insulation techniques so that the fine particles were able to be contained and to keep heat in or cold out of buildings, etc. Now, what was wrong with these little particles was that they were so tiny that when insulation was replaced or furniture that had asbestos in it was damaged, they would go into the lungs of human beings and cause bad things to happen. That being said, to review there, carcinogen is just anything that can cause cancer.